Man loses 30K over a hamster, but the real test wasn't what he thought. Broke, homeless, and betrayed, she left him. They say love dies slowly, like a candle flickering out. Mine exploded in an instant, over a hamster I never even saw. It began one Friday night, just as the world outside dipped into the blue hush of evening. My girlfriend and I had settled in with a bowl of popcorn, ready to drown ourselves in mindless shows and whispered touches. Then she turned to me, eyes bright in the television glow, and asked, "Want to see my sister's new hamster?" I didn't even think. "Nah, I'm good," I muttered, leaning in for a kiss. The sound of popcorn striking my face was louder than it should have been. Butter stung my eyes. She recoiled, fury flashing in her voice. "I knew my family was right about you. You're disgusting." Before I could catch my breath, she was on her feet, storming out. The door slammed so violently that my dog bolted under the couch. I just sat there, stunned, the word hamster rattling in my brain like a cruel joke. Surely she was just hangry. Surely this was nothing. I even ordered her favorite wings, imagining we'd laugh it off by morning. 30 minutes later, I was blocked on everything. Hours passed. The haze of lust and denial lifted, leaving only the cruel mirror of realization. I was an awful boyfriend. Kimberly adored animals, ferrets, strays, goldfish that never lived longer than a week. She treated each as if it were holy, and I had shrugged off the chance to be part of her world. So, by dawn, I tried to fix it the only way I knew how. I drove across town and adopted a trembling little brown hamster. Named him Brownie because my imagination was as empty as my chest. With shaky hope, I carried him to Kimberly's apartment. But when the door swung open, it wasn't her. It was Matthew, her ex. Basketball shorts, sweat-slick shoulders, that stupid vest clinging to his chest. He looked at me, then at the cage in my hands, and smirked. "Sorry, bro." Door slam. I stood there frozen, my new hamster squeaking as if mocking me. Not only had I lost Kimberly, but in 48 hours I was supposed to sign a lease with her. 30 grand down, non-refundable. My future collapsed in silence. I did the only thing left. I called Margaret, my oldest friend, the one who always pulled me back from the edge. But when I told her what happened, the silence was sharp, cutting. "You can't be serious," she said finally. Her tone was low, deadly. "Just how fast did you say no?" Uh, right away." A pause. A sigh, and then venom. "Wow, you aren't who I thought you were. All men really are the same." Click. Her voice lingered in my ears like poison. My text to her came back green instead of blue. Another door slammed, and this one hurt worse than Matthew's. 2 days until I was homeless. Still, I wasn't finished. Logged into Margaret's Instagram from a prank months ago, I checked Kimberly's profile. My chest hollowed out with every swipe. Story after story. Matthew at her favorite cafe. Matthew walking her dog. Matthew flashing that idiotic peace sign. But it didn't add up. Why dump me with some ridiculous hamster excuse if she already wanted him back? Then I saw it. Her wish list still held couples' Halloween costumes added only 3 days ago. Her Pinterest board? Updated yesterday, filled with wedding colors labeled Kimberly and George. She hadn't planned this. The breakup was sudden. Staged? Something else was going on. My phone buzzed. Mom's voice came through, shaking with anger. "I can't believe what you did. I'm ashamed of you." Then silence. A message from Paul followed. "Dude, you really messed up. She's devastated." And then nothing. Ghosted. I was unraveling. 1 day left. Desperation drove me to text Sharon, Kimberly's cousin. She'd always liked my jokes, so I cut straight through the storm cloud gathering over me. "Does your sister need help with her hamster?" The typing bubble lingered, blinked away, came back again. My heart pounded until her reply shattered me. "George, are you okay? What the hell are you talking about?" There was no hamster. There never had been. The steering wheel burned beneath my palms as I drove in frantic circles around town, Brownie squeaking like a guilty conscience from the passenger seat. Then, by some cruel twist, I spotted Kimberly's car at a Shell station. My chance. My heart lunged until I saw him. Matthew, pumping her gas like he belonged there. He walked over casual as a summer breeze and actually dapped me up. His pitying eyes made bile rise in my throat. No hard feelings, Brosky. I let his hand hang, cold. Hard feelings about what exactly? He chuckled, not cruelly, but almost like he pitied me. Listen, he said, low and steady. It took me months to figure out their loyalty test system. Matthew leaned against the car like he'd just delivered gospel truth. They've got this rule, he said, voice calm, almost pitying. Every family member asks their partner for one strange favor. Say no once, even to something stupid, and you're finished. Forever. I felt the urge to put my fist through his jaw. Instead, my voice broke out, tight and brittle. What the hell are you talking about? He smirked like I'd asked a child's question. The hamster was your test. I flunked mine 2 years ago, but I studied up, came back, and I said yes to everything, no matter how insane. That's why Kimberly took me back. Been 26 hours now. She's already talking rings. Brownie squeaked in his cage beside me like the universe itself was mocking me. Matthew clapped my shoulder with mock sympathy. Good luck, man. Then he walked away whistling. I sat in that Shell parking lot for nearly an hour, motionless, my hamster watching me with glassy, judgmental eyes. That's when it hit me. Matthew hadn't just gloated. He'd given me the playbook. He'd revealed the system. And if there was one thing I excelled at, it was playing games once I knew the rules. I pulled out my phone right there, hands trembling, and typed with frantic desperation, family loyalty tests, relationship trials, boyfriend weird favors. The search results felt like falling down a rabbit hole. Thousands of posts on forums and Reddit threads confirmed what I was too terrified to believe. This wasn't just Kimberly's family, it was a phenomenon. Entire clans ran covert tests to measure commitment. Say yes, you were welcomed as one of them. Say no, and you were branded unworthy. One guy had been dumped for refusing to cat sit on the night of his grandmother's funeral. Another lost his fiancée because he didn't drive her cousin to the airport at 2 a.m. Stories upon stories of people exiled from relationships for hesitating once, for daring to protest, for being human. I screenshotted everything. The horror stories, the loopholes, the rare tales of redemption. My stomach knotted, my throat burned. I wasn't alone, but that didn't make the ground under me feel any less like quicksand. I needed insider knowledge. Someone who wasn't poisoned by secrecy. Someone who might actually tell me the truth. Sharon, Kimberly's cousin. She'd always laughed at my dumb jokes, rolled her eyes, but smiled anyway. Maybe she'd listen. I texted her, heart pounding. Can we grab coffee? It's important, about your family. Her reply came fast. 15 minutes, near campus. Then I have plans with my sister. The word sister burned like acid. Back to the phantom hamster, but I shoved it down and drove. Sharon was already waiting, arms folded, confusion written on her face. I bought us both drinks, sat down, and tried to explain without sounding completely unhinged. Matthew told me your family runs these loyalty tests, that every member asks for one weird favor. If you say no, you're cut off, forever. Her eyes widened, disbelief twisting into something sharper. She shook her head over and over. That can't be... I've heard my aunt joke about testing boyfriends, but I thought it was just jokes. Then her expression shifted. Memory flickered across her face like lightning. Wait, my mom once asked Jake, you remember him, to help move furniture. At 3 a.m, he said no, said he had work. Within a week, everyone was cold. They stopped inviting him, kept telling me I deserved better, and eventually I ended it. Her voice cracked as the realization landed. She pressed her palms to her temples. Oh my God, that's why. I leaned in, desperate. Do you know about any other rules? Anything else? But she just shook her head, dazed. She hadn't known. Not really. She glanced at her phone, muttered something about being late, and left in a hurry, leaving me staring into the dregs of my untouched coffee. The weight of everything pressed down on me. My chest felt hollow, my breath shallow. One day left until the lease. One day left until my entire life collapsed. I drove straight to Margaret's apartment. She'd cut me off, blocked me, but she knew. She had to know. She'd been the first to scold me, the one who went silent with disappointment. I knocked, and knocked again. 5 minutes of pounding before the door finally cracked open. Margaret's face appeared in the dim light, jaw tight, eyes seething with the kind of anger that hides heartbreak. You've got some nerve showing up here. Margaret listened in silence as I spilled everything. Matthew's revelation, the loyalty test system, the hamster that wasn't just a hamster. Her expression never softened. She just shook her head slowly like she was watching a child explain why the sky should be green. Knowing about it now doesn't change anything, she said finally. Her voice was steady, almost cruel in its composure. You failed. A good boyfriend doesn't need to know it's a test to say yes. He just does. Her words hit harder than Matthew's smirk. I wanted to argue, to claw back some dignity, but before I could, she dropped a bomb that hollowed me out completely. I was supposed to test you too, she admitted, folding her arms. I hadn't gotten around to it yet. My plan was to ask you to skip the playoff game next week and help me move a couch. Her lips curled into a humorless smile. Something trivial, but you would have had to say yes, no hesitation. That's the rule. She leaned against the doorway, studying me like a condemned man. There's a family group chat. We coordinate everything, share results, keep score. The floor tilted beneath me. Show me, I begged. My voice cracked with desperation. Please, Margaret, I need to see it. She resisted, but desperation is persuasive. After a long silence, she sighed and unlocked her phone, pressing it into my hand like a judge handing down a sentence. There it was, glowing in the chat window. My execution, written in black and white. Kimberly's mom. He failed the hamster test, didn't even hesitate. Message after message poured in. Disappointment, disapproval, smug, I told you so's. Words carved me open. Kimberly deserves better. Knew he wasn't family first. Waste of time. The worst cut was also the smallest. Aunt Emma had chimed in, suggesting mercy. Maybe give him another chance. He didn't know the rules, but Kimberly's mom crushed it immediately. A good man doesn't need rules to know. A good man says yes. My stomach turned to stone. I scrolled frantically, looking for Kimberly's words, hoping she had defended me, whispered something in my corner. But her side of the chat was silent. A graveyard of absence. She didn't even fight for me, I murmured. Margaret's voice sliced through my despair. There's only one way back. Once you fail, you're done forever. Unless you disappear like Matthew did. Study. Wait. Return different. 2 years? I whispered. She nodded. It took him 2 years to crawl back into their good graces. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes. I don't have 2 years. I've got 12 hours before I lose 30 grand. For the first time, pity flickered in Margaret's eyes. There might be one loophole. Aunt Emma. I lifted my head. She's the matriarch, the only one with veto power. If she chooses to, she can overrule everyone. But don't get your hopes up. She hates manipulation. She'll see right through you if you're playing games. If you want a chance, you'll have to be real. I staggered toward my car like a man walking to his own funeral. My hands trembled as I scrolled through contacts. Emma's number was still there, buried under old birthday planning texts. My thumb hovered, then pressed. The call rang once. She answered immediately, her voice as sharp and unreadable as a blade. George? Just my name. Neutral but heavy. I need to talk, I said, my throat tight. About Kimberly? About the tests? A silence. I could almost hear her thinking. Then, meet me at the diner on Maple in an hour. A pause, then steel. But listen carefully. I'm not here for sob stories. I'll know if you're genuine. If you're not, you're wasting my time. The line went dead. I sat in the parking lot of the diner 20 minutes early, staring at strangers walking in and out, rehearsing words that all sounded wrong. My reflection in the windshield looked like a ghost. When she arrived, she didn't even glance at my car. Just walked in, straight-backed, a storm wrapped in elegance. I followed, heart pounding, and slid into the booth across from her. She ordered coffee without opening the menu. Then her eyes cut into me like knives. Why did you say no to the hamster? She asked. No preamble, no warmth. I swallowed, forced the truth past the lump in my throat. Because I thought it was nothing, just a pet. I was comfortable with Kimberly. I didn't think I needed to prove anything by meeting a hamster. For a beat, silence. Then she laughed. Low, unexpected, sharp. That, she said, leaning back, is the most honest answer I've ever heard from someone who failed. Emma's eyes never wavered as she stirred her coffee. Then, almost casually, she began unraveling the history of their strange system. It started with my sister, she said, her tone flat but weighted with old bitterness. 15 years of marriage, 2 children, a house that looked perfect from the outside. And then one day, gone. Left her for his secretary. Nobody saw it coming. He played the part in public, smiled at the barbecues, remembered birthdays. He looked perfect. And that was the problem. He fooled us all. Her gaze was sharp as glass. So we made the tests. Little things. Harmless favors. If a man won't bend for something small, he won't stand for something big. These trials smoke out the frauds before they can waste years of our lives. I swallowed hard, the words crawling down my throat like nails. She leaned forward, voice lowering. Matthew failed his test 2 years ago. Kimberly's grandmother needed a ride to bingo. He said he was busy. A beat. He wasn't. He was home playing video games. My fists clenched against the table. Then how did he crawl back in? Her lips curved, but it wasn't a smile. He learned, studied us like scripture, memorized values, quirks, what mattered to each person. He came back different, genuine. Now he drives Grandma to bingo every single week without being asked. He remembers every birthday. He brings thoughtful gifts. He doesn't miss a thing. He made himself into the man this family expects. I wanted to scream that it was fake, a performance. But the lump in my throat kept me silent. Emma studied me with a look that stripped away my excuses. You're desperate, George. I can smell it. But desperation proves nothing. A drowning man will grab anything that floats. What matters is what you do when the panic ends. I'll be watching. Don't think you can bluff your way through. Her words sank like stones. When I thanked her, she only nodded, her voice flat as a verdict. Good luck. It sounded more like goodbye. Outside, the afternoon light had turned harsh and unforgiving. My phone buzzed in my pocket. 3 missed calls from Jessica at the leasing office, plus a voicemail. Her clipped voice carved straight through me. If we don't have both signatures by 5, the deposit is gone. The unit goes back on the market. It was already 2. Kimberly wasn't signing anything, not for me. Not now. My gut twisted until I could barely breathe. I sat in the car staring at nothing, Emma's words clawing at me. Show genuine change. Care about what matters to the family? Animals. That was Kimberly's religion. Maybe if I showed her, no, if I proved that I cared, there was still a chance. Even if it was too late for the lease, maybe it wasn't too late for her. I drove across town like a man possessed, pulled up at the animal shelter on the south side, and marched inside. The woman at the desk blinked at me when I said I wanted to volunteer immediately. My voice cracked from urgency, but she shrugged and handed me gloves. We always need help. Minutes later, I was knee-deep in bleach water, hosing down concrete floors, scraping waste from kennels while dogs barked and clawed at the bars. The stench was overwhelming. My hands blistered against the metal handle of the scoop. After half an hour, sweat clinging to my neck, I pulled out my phone, snapped a quick selfie with the kennels behind me, and typed a caption about giving back to the community. Posted it to Instagram. Validation came instantly, except not the kind I wanted. Margaret texted within minutes. "This is pathetic." A second message followed before I could respond. "Stop trying so hard." The words gutted me more than the smell of bleach ever could. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Matthew. The notification froze me before I even opened it. His message was a dagger wrapped in casual cruelty. "Saw your shelter post. Not genuine. Kimberly knows you're creeping on her stories from Margaret's account." My chest caved in. The world tilted. I stared at the screen at my reflection in the black glass. Then I looked up at the kennels. The dogs pacing, whining, waiting. Not for likes, not for pity. For someone to actually care. My throat burned. Without thinking, I deleted the post, wiped the evidence clean, then shoved the phone back in my pocket and picked up the hose again. If nothing else, at least the dogs needed me. And they didn't care whether anyone was watching. The sting of bleach burned my eyes, my spine ached from crouching, but I kept moving down the row of cages. Mop, hose, repeat. Until I reached him. A pit bull mix, curled tight against the back wall, trembling like every sound in that shelter was a gunshot. His ribs quivered with every shallow breath, tail clamped between his legs. Eyes too big, too terrified. Something inside me cracked. I dropped the mop and lowered myself onto the concrete, cross-legged, hands loose at my sides. I didn't say anything. Didn't reach. Just sat there, letting him know I wasn't leaving. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Slowly, inch by inch, he crept forward. Close enough to sniff the tips of my fingers before darting back again. The coordinator walked by and paused. "He's too nervous for the shelter. Needs a foster. Just a few weeks to build confidence." The words left my mouth before I even thought them. "I'll do it." She blinked at me. "You sure? He'll need patience." "Yeah, I'm sure." Only later did reality slam into me. I was about to be homeless with nowhere but Edward's couch, and Edward's landlord didn't even allow goldfish, let alone a pit bull. Still, I called him anyway, praying for a miracle. He answered on the third ring, and his silence said it all. "No pets. Not even for a night, bro." I hung up, my gut hollowing out. Homeless, broke, with a hamster already squeaking beside me in his travel cage, and now a dog that needed a safe place more than I did. My phone buzzed. Jessica from the leasing office. 2 hours left. Need both signatures. Otherwise, the deposit is forfeited. $30,000. Gone because I couldn't say yes to a hamster that never even existed. My hands shook so hard I could barely type, but I texted Kimberly anyway. "I know about the tests. I know I failed. I'm not asking for another chance. Just please sign the lease cancellation so we can recover something from the early termination clause." Her reply came instantly. "A knife to the chest? There is no clause. You wanted to skip it to save $50 a month, remember?" I did remember. Vividly. Sitting in her apartment, smug and certain we'd never need it because we were forever. Now that choice was about to cost me everything. The pit bull's eyes met mine through the kennel bars. Fragile, searching. He didn't know the details, but he looked at me like he could see straight through the wreckage of my decisions. I called my mom, desperation cracking my voice. Maybe she could step in, co-sign something, but she just sighed, her voice tired and heavy. "I warned you. You never listen, George. You rush into things." Her disappointment was the final weight pressing me into the shelter floor. I didn't even argue, just listened to her words echo in the emptiness already swallowing me whole. 90 minutes left. I drove without thinking, only knowing I couldn't sit still. Kimberly's apartment complex rose up like a place I no longer belonged to. Her car was there, Matthew's truck too. I stayed in the car, engine idling, pulse roaring in my ears. Boxes. They were loading boxes into her trunk. Kimberly wore the faded college sweatshirt I'd given her last Christmas, sleeves tugged over her hands. She laughed at something Matthew said while he hefted the lamp we picked out together at Target. They moved in rhythm, practiced, easy, like this wasn't new, like they'd been doing it forever. She looked happy, happier than she had in weeks. My chest caved. On the passenger seat, Brownie scratched at the bars of his travel cage, squeaking like he knew the world was unraveling. I stared at him, then at the empty space in the back seat where a trembling pit bull might soon ride, and wondered how I was supposed to carry all of this when I didn't even have a place to sleep. The clock on my dashboard glowed like a countdown to execution. 87 minutes. Watching Kimberly and Matthew move together, her shoulders brushing his arm draped around her like it had never left, made it clear the ship had sailed. Jessica's text buzzed relentlessly, demanding final confirmation. My stomach knotted, fingers trembling until I couldn't sit still anymore. I grabbed Brownie's cage, the hamster squeaking on his wheel as if sensing the urgency, and stepped out into the late afternoon heat. Across the lot, Kimberly froze the moment she saw me. Her body stiffened, chin lifting as though bracing for a storm. Matthew turned with a box of kitchen stuff, my old coffee maker jutting out the top like a reminder of everything I'd already lost. I lifted the cage, my voice cracked. Do you want him? I got him for you. For us. After the hamster thing. Her eyes flicked to the little wheel spinning inside the cage. For 2 fleeting seconds, her expression softened, softer than it had been in weeks. Then it hardened again, cold and resolute. No, you keep him. You made that choice. That's your responsibility now. The words sliced deeper than I expected. Then she twisted the knife. Besides, Matthew's allergic to small animals. The irony almost made me laugh. Probably the same allergy that doomed him 2 years ago. She turned away, disappearing into the building with another box, leaving me standing in the parking lot with my hamster and my humiliation. Matthew set his box down and stepped closer, the thick wave of his cologne hitting me before his words did. He lowered his voice. Look, man, I feel bad about the deposit. If it helps, I could spot you $5,000. At least cover a couple months somewhere else. But his eyes kept darting away, like even he didn't believe the offer. I studied him. Basketball shorts, forced sympathy, the man who'd dedicated 2 years of his life to memorizing a family's quirks like a textbook. Was it worth it? I asked flatly. 2 years just to pass their games? For the first time, Matthew's mask cracked. His shoulders sagged, his voice quiet. Some days I'm not sure, but I love her enough to play by their rules. It was the saddest thing I'd ever heard. Love shackled, bartered, tested. I walked back to my car, Brownie squeaking from the passenger seat, and checked the time. 71 minutes left. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. I called Jessica. My voice was hollow. I can't sign. Start the forfeiture process. But she surprised me. Wait, there might be one option. If we can find someone to take over the lease within 24 hours, the complex may approve a transfer. $5,000 transfer fee. That's it. 5,000. Not 30. Still crushing, but survivable. Hope flickered. Do it, I said instantly. Please. The moment we hung up, I blasted every social media account I had. Lease available today. Offering $1,000 incentive for immediate takeover. Responses poured in within minutes. 3 serious prospects. My pulse raced as I clung to the sliver of salvation. The first couple showed up 20 minutes later, sweet, smiling, credit score shining. They loved the unit, but they wanted to move in next month. Useless. The second was a guy alone, couldn't afford it. Kept rambling about maybe finding a roommate later, which Jessica shot down immediately. The third made my skin crawl. He asked 3 times if Kimberly still lived here. If she was single now, I had to force my hands into fists to keep from breaking his nose. Sitting in the leasing office, drained and ready to surrender, I stared at the clock, minutes evaporating, when my phone buzzed again. A text from Sharon. Coworker just broke up with her boyfriend, desperate for a place. Today. My heart slammed against my ribs. Sharon's text came like a lifeline tossed into stormy water. She's got good credit, steady income, can meet you at the office in 20 minutes. I typed back so fast my thumb cramped. Yes, please. 22 minutes later, Marina walked in. Calm, collected, cashier's check in hand. Perfect paperwork. No hesitation. Jessica processed the transfer right there, and just like that, the noose around my neck loosened. $6,000 gone instead of 30. Painful, but not fatal. Marina shook my hand with a warm smile. Thanks for the opportunity. I handed her the keys, numb with relief, the weight in my chest finally breaking just enough to breathe. I'd dodged the bullet that should have ended me, but as I turned to leave, the front door swung open. Kimberly. And Matthew, right behind her, carrying a folder thick with paperwork. She froze when she saw me. Her eyes flicked past me to Marina still filling out her checklist at the counter. Her face twisted through 5 emotions in 2 seconds. Surprise, confusion, maybe even regret. Matthew shifted awkwardly, hands stuffed in his pockets, watching the scene like he'd stumbled into the wrong play. Marina waved at them, oblivious, then went back to her forms. Jessica called Kimberly and Matthew over to the other desk, but Kimberly kept glancing at me, trying to piece together how I had managed not to drown without her. I didn't give her an answer. I just left. By the time I reached Edward's place, he was already clearing out his spare room for me and Brownie. We hauled everything from my old apartment in 3 long hours, his truck groaning under the weight of my mistakes. At midnight, I sat on an air mattress with a beer in my hand, Brownie rolling in his plastic ball across the floor like he was finally free. Edward clinked his bottle against mine and said his lease was up in 2 months. If I could get my money right, maybe we'd find a place together. The first real plan I'd had in weeks. The next morning, I kept my word. I went back to the shelter, slid into the pit bull's kennel, and read aloud while he trembled in the corner. No cameras, no captions. Just me, the dog, and silence. Day after day I showed up. By Friday, his fear had melted into tentative trust, his head nudging my palm. On Saturday, a family came in, a little girl with pigtails and a father who knelt to scratch behind the pit bull's ears. They signed the adoption papers and I handed him over. That evening, they sent me a video of him sprinting across their backyard, tail high for the first time in God knows how long. The joy hit me harder than any Instagram notification ever had. That same afternoon, my phone buzzed. Aunt Emma, I heard you handled the lease well, and that you refused Matthew's money. That shows character. I read it twice. Then deleted it without replying, because I wasn't doing this for her approval anymore. 2 weeks passed. Work, sleep, shelter shifts on the weekends. A rhythm. A new kind of life. Then Margaret texted me out of nowhere. I'm sorry. When we spoke, her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. She admitted the family's system was unraveling. Sharon's boyfriend had discovered the tests and dumped her on the spot, refusing to be judged like a lab rat. Other cracks were forming, people asking if the tests were worth all the broken relationships. But Kimberly's mother was doubling down, declaring the system flawless, that it weeded out the weak. I told Margaret I understood, that I was moving on, and I meant it. A few days later, Paul hit me up, said his daughter wanted a cat for her birthday, wanted me to help them find the right one. For the first time in months, the future didn't feel like a trap. It felt like a door creaking open. That weekend, I met Paul and his daughter at the shelter. We walked past the rows of cages until we found him, an orange tabby with bright green eyes who leapt straight into her lap and began to purr like he'd been waiting for her all along. Paul smiled in a way I hadn't seen in years. The adoption papers were signed, and afterward we grabbed beers at the sports bar down the street. He admitted he never knew what to say when Kimberly called him crying that night. The whole hamster thing was weird, he said, shaking his head. He confessed he ghosted me because the family group chat was relentless, a current too strong to swim against. I let it go. There was no point in resenting him. A month later, I was in the coffee shop near the shelter, waiting for my usual order when I turned and saw her. Kimberly. Alone at a corner table, laptop open, textbooks spread out. She looked up, startled, and for a moment neither of us moved. I could have left. I should have. But instead I walked over and asked if I could sit. She nodded, closed her laptop, and for 5 minutes we were just two people again, talking about classes, about the shelter. Then she lowered her voice. The tests, they're getting toxic, but my family's everything to me. So I go along with it, even when it feels wrong. I told her I hoped she was happy with Matthew, and I meant it because anger had become too heavy to carry. Her eyes dropped to her coffee. He passes every test perfectly now, but sometimes I wonder if he's being himself or just performing. He keeps a notebook of everyone's preferences, studies it before dinners. It's exhausting. I didn't know what to say, so I just wished her luck and left. A week later, Edward and I found a 2-bedroom that allowed pets. Affordable, ours. We signed the lease, moved in with Brownie, and I filed the paperwork to foster dogs officially. Moving day was chaos. Boxes everywhere. Brownie skittering in his ball like a tiny explorer. But by the end of the weekend, it felt like home. 3 months after the breakup, my phone rang. Aunt Emma. She told me the family was reconsidering the test system. Too many implosions. Sharon's boyfriend gone. 2 cousins single again. They were calling a meeting to debate it and wanted me to share my perspective. I thought about it for 2 seconds before saying no. That wasn't my burden anymore. 2 weeks later, Matthew's name lit up my phone while I was scrubbing kennels. His message was long. He and Kimberly were engaged. But already he was tired. The notebook, the studying, the endless performance. It was wearing him down. "Thank you for not warning me," he wrote. "If I'd known, I would have run." I deleted the message without replying, picked up the hose and kept scrubbing. The next morning at the dog park, I spotted her, Kimberly's mom, walking her pristine white poodle along the fence line. She approached, voice unsteady, and apologized. For the tests, for the damage. She said she realized too late that their rules drove away good people and rewarded the ones who faked their way in. The beagle I was fostering barked furiously at her poodle, giving me an excuse to walk away before I had to answer. Life slipped into rhythm. Work, volunteering, evenings with Edward. Months passed quietly. Then, on a Saturday at the shelter, a new volunteer showed up in the cat section. Cynthia. She wore her hair tied back, sleeves rolled up, already laughing as kittens swarmed her shoelaces. We started talking while scooping litter boxes. She noticed Brownie and my carrier by the door and tilted her head. "Why do you have a hamster?" So I told her. The entire ridiculous saga, the fake hamster test, the failed lease, the 30 grand almost gone. She laughed so hard she had to sit down on the floor beside the cat cages, tears in her eyes. And for the first time in a long time, I laughed too. Cynthia and I started getting coffee after our Saturday shifts at the shelter. Conversation slipped into something natural, easy. She told me her family was normal. No hidden tests, no secret counsels, no strange loyalty trials disguised as favors. Just parents who asked for help carrying groceries or fixing the Wi-Fi. No games, no scorecards. 6 months after the Kimberly disaster, Cynthia and I were together officially. And for the first time in years, being in a relationship felt light, effortless. The weight was gone. Looking back now, I can see that losing $30,000 was its own kind of tuition fee. Painful, yes, but it taught me something I couldn't have learned otherwise. Some games aren't worth winning if you have to erase yourself to play them. Brownie's still here, caged by my bed, chirping into the dark like a tiny metronome. Edward turned out to be a solid roommate, the kind who does his dishes without reminders. The shelter has become my anchor, something that matters outside my own mess. And Cynthia? She still laughs every time I tell the hamster story to someone new. Harder each time, as if the absurdity grows in the retelling. Sometimes the biggest victory isn't clawing your way back into someone else's test. It's realizing you don't need to take the test at all. It's stepping away, finding your own ground, and living a life that feels like yours again. Strange twists, unexpected turns, but maybe that's what makes the story worth telling.